the middle, yeah.
Yeah. All the good stuff's in the small copy. Yeah. All right. Thank you. All right. Congratulations on a pretty incredible week. And thank you for inviting someone like me who is sort of on the fringe of design. I've certainly been a part of this community. I'm intensely proud of this community. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Texas. I'm a Texas kid. I was a swimmer. I'm more of a floater these days, but I swam at University of Arkansas. I went to ad school. The funny thing is, out of undergrad, I sent my book to the best agencies in the country. I sent my sad little University of Arkansas portfolio to the great Wieden Kennedy. And they sent me the loveliest letter back, but basically it was a long way to say no. I talked to a guy at the Richards Group down in Dallas, and he said, I see something here. There's a spark, there's something, but you got to go to ad school, right? That's what I did. I think that ad school can sometimes be for the privileged. And I'm not sure how privileged I was. My dad was a used car salesman, and we went bankrupt when I was in high school. But I still found my way to Atlanta, right? I found my tribe. I found a way to be creative but competitive. And that's what ad school was for me. I've hired a lot of people over the years, and most of them did not go to ad school. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I say all the time, there are many ways in, but once you're here, what you do here is all that matters. So that was my path. That worked for me. My first job was down in Dallas at a big agency in the Publicis system. The ECD at the time, he had 2 hits. He had done Alex from Stroh's. You guys are not as old as I am, but Alex could go fetch a beer from the refrigerator. And the other thing he did was the California Raisins, right? So he had his amazing but cheesy pop cultural moment. But he was a tyrant. It was terrible. It was a very bad place. And I came out of ad school naive enough to think that once I got there, everything was going to happen, right? I was going to make it rain awards. I was going to be incredible. I was going to change everything. That was my first lesson, that you can't change culture. If you're going to change culture, it's going to take a hell of a long time, and you certainly can't do it right out of school unless you're much more amazing and incredible than I was. So I didn't have a lot of endurance there. 8 months later, I took my second job at an agency in St. Louis called Glennon. We worked on some of the we worked on Michelob. We worked on some of the specialties. There was an ad for Roundup weed killer. Gasp. They had just shown up in CA, and I was impressed with that. I wanted to be in CA. And they had Sweet Tarts and Tangy Taffy. So there was Sunline Brands. I got to work on beer, and I was going to get in CA with weed killer. I was there about a year and 8 months, and I had the opportunity to come over to Rogers Townsend. And I was the 20th employee about 18 months after Rogers Townsend was formed. And although I did step away once we were acquired by the big Omnicom, I went down to McGarrett Jesse. I worked at Austin. And I would say that what I admire about Austin is a lot of what we have here and what we continue to build upon. Austin is a wonderful collision of incredible design and conceptual integrated advertising-like objects. So there's a real beautiful collision that happened in Austin that I think we're probably already along the way to model ourselves after. I chased a brand that I always admired in Porsche. Don't judge me, but I admired the work from Goodby and Carmichael Lynch on Porsche. So I got an opportunity to be reunited with a great partner of mine named Luke Partridge. We worked together at Rogers Townsend. We worked together again at CK. I proved to myself that I could write Porsche work. And then I was in town for a wedding one time, and I had lunch with the incredible Tom Townsend and Tim Rogers. And I just felt like I had to come home. So I came back to St. Louis, and I started on Obama's inauguration day. So I gave it a good 15 years or so. I rode the ship down. It's not my fault that the agency failed, but the job at the time was to finish the job. So culturally, experience-wise, I grew up, I did my best work, and I learned so much about the business and everything in the business while I was at Rogers Townsend. That ended in July, officially. But sort of spiritually, I guess I was through it a little earlier this summer. 5 months ago, I had absolutely no intentions to start an agency. But plans change, and I believe that we need great new creative agencies in this town. I know we can do it. I hear a lot about the talent. We have the talent. Sometimes I will say, do we have the talent? Let's prove that we have the talent, right? I know we have it in us, but sometimes we get conditioned to believe that we don't. So anyway, it's a great new moment. Sorry for all that bio. That's the longest bio I've ever said. But now I am the CEO and founder of Horse Feathers, and that's the first time I've ever said that out loud. So thank you for having me at Design Week. I mentioned in some sort of little write-up for this event about 3 weeks ago that I had given this presentation before. I've given it to students at Lindenwood. I've given it to students in Oklahoma City. They actually have an incredible ad club there, 1,200 entries and over 300 student entries, right? So it can happen anywhere, right? We can't be judgy and go, Oklahoma City, why is McCormick judging Oklahoma City? Why is he speaking to them? You can feel when something's going right. You can feel the momentum, and you've got to feed that. And that's kind of what that was. I'm really impressed with them. And then I think I did give a version of this at the AMA St. Louis. So this is sort of hanging around. I think David Illig helped me create the first deck, and thank you so much, Tyler, for helping me make it what it needs to be for today. I really appreciate that. It's another example about reaching out, doing things with new people, and us all coming together and doing great things. So the presentation is called Making Magic from the Middle. Geography is simply where we call home. But here's what I believe and here's what I know. If you pay attention, you can absolutely make magic from anywhere, right? Yes, we need to support ourselves. Yes, we need to love what happens here, what happens downtown, what happens in Clayton. This community is what matters. But I would just encourage and implore us to all pay attention in our own way to the things we love and the brands we love and who's making it. Who's making it in London with Uncommon? Who's making it in Canada with Mischief? Who's making it in Chicago with Quality Meats? Who's making it in Austin with Preacher? And all the agencies that you know that I don't know, the production companies, right? The design firms, you know them better than I do. I know what I know. But I believe if we pay attention, we can go get it. I think now is our moment. And if we put it all together, we can start to attract. We can start to attract talent back, and we can start to attract clients back. So there we are. That's a map. That's St. Louis. Here's where we are now. Cat's out of the bag. We're officing in the building where Coolfire is. If you're ever over there on the 7th floor, we're just in the corner office. There's just 4 of us. But what I like to say is Jeff and David offered me a place to sit when I didn't have one, right? And then we just worked out the terms. So it's really nice to be close to editors and audio guys. There's a great new synergy that's happening. Some agencies absolutely have production embedded. So we need to chase those new models, see what they look like, see what the grand experiment is all about. So we are here in the middle, but I want to make sure we all agree that M is not for middling. It's a great word. Look up the definition. It's perfect, right? We don't want to be average. It's not for mediocre, and it's not for medium. Who knows what that is? It's a medium pizza. I know, it's my shtick, right? It's like my dad joke. But someone gave this to me one time, and I use it all the time. Sometimes the sensible choice, right, when we're thinking about what we want to eat, especially if we're in a place that's not so inspired, you're just like, I'll just have a medium pizza. But it's never what you remember, right? It's not a personal pan pizza. It's not that little Caesar's pizza that's as big as a table. It doesn't have black garlic or Saloon Bedou or all the other squash blossoms, right? It doesn't have all the fancy shit that you go home and you tell people, I had this incredible pizza. There's nothing memorable about a medium pizza. And I just want to make sure we all know and agree, we are not here to make that. We are here to make what's memorable, special, unique, and absolutely makes the most of our own abilities. Here's the clan. Jen Silverberg, thank you so much. You made this incredible photo of us. We look like grown-ups, right? We look like we're an agency of the year, even though we haven't really made anything yet. But, again, if you just reach out to who you know in the community, it doesn't have to be complicated, It was a half day, if even, of us getting together and trying some things, and we're just super proud of it. So this is Tracy and Allison, myself, and Jim Stepler. We're 4 people. We have a couple of great freelance friends right now, and we're just going to keep making more circles around us, right? We're going to build this thing just the very best that we can. My presentation, hopefully you already got a feel for it. I promise I'll stop yapping at some point and actually push play. I very much believe in showing instead of telling. So I have a lot of video content throughout, and I'll certainly just talk in the loosest way possible while I try to continue to make my point throughout. First off, I think I've already established this, but I am not a designer. But I know that that's not right. Something here just didn't work right, Eric, right? Like something didn't happen right? They redid it, but it just didn't quite land. I have an instinct for these things. I've already talked a little bit about this. What I admire about the design community, about what's happening right along this strip, what I've observed over the years, and even events like the National Addies, when Chris is there or Katie's there from Toki, when we win, we cheer for each other. And I think that the advertising community, not to pick sides, can learn a lot from that. Because I think the way the advertising community has operated over the years is a lot like Spy versus Spy. Like, here's Paradowski, there's Osborne and Barr, I'm not sure we've always been good to each other, but we're all competing over the same money, right? We're all competing over the same talent. And after a local awards show, my people get poached, How do I feel? I feel like I want to throw that dagger, right? But what's also cool about Spy versus Spy, if you don't know much about it, it was created by a gentleman named Antonio Prohias, right? He was a Cuban refugee. He escaped during the Castro administration. He found himself in New York in May, and by August, he had sold his first 3 Spy versus Spy comics to Mad Magazine. If you kind of look here they are shaking hands, and hey, let's have some tea. They're sitting down, they're having some tea. Eventually, they pour the tea out, and they kill each other's cats, right? Let's not do that to each other. Let's pull together. As I went down this rabbit hole the other night on the internet, it appeared in the January 1961 edition of Mad Magazine. The election had happened November 7th, obviously November 8th, the year before, and they actually knew the results that night. The crazy thing is, Kennedy only won by about 100,000 votes, but it was sort of an electoral landslide. Mad Magazine believed that they would get the January edition out, and this was their pattern, 7 to 9 weeks ahead of time. So they printed on each cover, right? It was a flip cover. So on one side, they were congratulating Nixon. On the other side, they were congratulating Kennedy. And whoever won the election was the side of the magazine that should face the sidewalk at the newsstand. So just some crazy design nerdery. I'll show you one more thing. Can anyone read Morse code? The artist signed his work in Morse code. How fucking cool is that? I love that. I love that. Okay, a few words about storytelling. I think we should take our work very seriously. I don't think we should take ourselves too seriously. Another observation about designers over the years, I've worked with a few, they're not afraid to get their opinion out there. They have very strong opinions. And Stefan Sagmeister certainly represents that. So this is Stefan talking about storytelling.
Okay. Hi, my name is Stefan Sagmeister. I am an Austrian graphic designer who lives and works in New York City. Well, I'm actually quite critical of the storytelling thing. I think that all the storytellers are not storytellers. Like recently I read an interview with somebody who designs roller coasters and he referred to himself as a storyteller. No, fuckhead, you are not a storyteller, you're a roller coaster designer. And that's fantastic. And more power to you. But why would you want to be a storyteller if you design roller coasters? Or if you are storytelling, then the story that you tell is bullshit. It's like this little itsy bitsy little thing. Yes, you go through the space, and yes, you see other spaceships, and yes, that's your story. That's a fucking bullshit story. That's boring. People who actually tell stories, meaning people who write novels and make feature films, don't see themselves as storytellers. It's all the people who are not storytellers, who kind of for strange reasons, because it's in the air, suddenly now want to be storytellers. There is this fallacy out there. I mean, I don't think that I fell for it, but somehow, maybe unconsciously I did. You know, then you sort of feel, I've seen it in a film, so I must be able to do one. And of course, this is the most stupidest thought ever. You know, it's like, oh, I watched a Philharmonic, that's why I'm a virtuoso violin player. You know, well, I'm not, even though I watched a lot of Philharmonic concerts. I think by now, in our space, really the space of design, it sort of took on the mantle of bullshit. You know, now everybody's a storyteller.
He's a character. The truth is, most of us in this room are storytellers, but I just love that he's so confident that we are not all storytellers. So we should remind ourselves, make sure that we are telling great stories when we attempt to do so. In my experience, no matter what you do, whether it's architecture, whether it's design, whether it's production and film craft, or whether it's advertising, we face a lot of complicated problems, but I think we're at our best when we find elegant, simple solutions. What I've learned over the years in my career is people crave simplicity. And when businesses have problems and brands have problems, they become very complex, right? They don't know how to find their way out. But the gift that we have as creative people is, although our process is messy, our solutions should be elegantly simple, right? There was a guy named Luke Sullivan. He wrote a book, right, about, hey, Whipple, squeeze this. Luke was famous for walking into a room with clients one time with a handful of tennis balls, 5. And he threw all 5 tennis balls at a client. How do you think it went? She was pelted by tennis balls, and she caught none. Then he picked up 1 tennis ball, and he tossed it to her, and she caught it. And that was his lesson, right? One message is what you retain. So if we can be simple, we win. She fired him because you don't teach clients lessons like that in real time. A couple examples of where I think we won with something that was very simple and hopefully unexpected. This was for a product called Bugstop.
Create a powerful bug-killing barrier around your home. Spectracide Bugstop Home Barrier with AccuShot Sprayer. Tame the wild.
It's ridiculous, right? Well, so you get a yard full of bugs out in your yard, they're having a party. They're having a party. But when they approach your house, how's it going to go? They're not getting in. What's the product called? Bugstop. Sometimes we overcomplicate these things, you guys. I mentioned this brand before. I had an opportunity to work on it. Good brands know who they are. Porsche certainly knows who they are. This is old, right? This is like 2008-ish. But the 911 Turbo knows exactly who it is, right? The 911 Turbo is the bull in the pasture that doesn't have to pull a muscle, right? It's supremely capable and confident. So this is Porsche CI. Everything had a beautiful white box around it. You didn't overwork the photography. And you were able to get off simple little lines like never blinks first, right? You could almost have a period after each word, right? Porsche is like American Psycho, right? Like there's never a hair out of place, you know? Like it's at the absolute limits of performance. It still looks like that crazy little radioactive frog. So again, just an example of pure simplicity. And this was an example of a piece of copy I wrote that the client didn't change one word. So you don't always nail it, but when you get it, it feels really good. A little something more about just to reinforce our defiance, our rebelliousness, and to remind ourselves that we are still artists, even though we're operating in this very complicated world of commerce, right? Everything gets tested. There's so much research and data. There's so much shit you have to go through before you make the magic, but you still have to. But behind your calm exterior, behind your professionalism, you still have to try to take those crazy chances. So this was a book that the great Wieden and Kennedy used to give people who were new to the Nike account. And the little internal book was called Phil Knight Hates Advertising. So here's your client, Phil Knight and Nike. But it was a reminder that we hate advertising. We're not here to make the usual ads. And this was a little something from the PDF that I got so many years ago. It just reinforces that the gut is always more reliable than the research. So we know we have to go through all this now. It just has to happen. There's almost no way to avoid it. But the example is, if you ask a kid what she wants in a cake, she's going to tell you she just wants icing. If you make that cake for the kids, nothing but icing, the kid's not only going to love the cake, the kid's going to vomit, right? So sometimes if you ask people what they want, it's not really what they need. So be leery of research. That's your job as a creative person. It's a necessary thing. You're going to have to get through it. You're going to have to work with clients. But try to find those right moments to work around it and still make something amazing. I think maybe an example that we made a few years ago was a campaign called Life Well Crafted for House of Rohl. House Rohl is a luxury plumbing and fixture brands within Fortune Brands up in Cleveland and Chicago. Moen is the big accessible brand that everyone's familiar with. But House of Rohl was this little boutique, this little house of brands. And instead of making a 30-second commercial that was about finish and color, right? Is it a brass fixture? Is it a chrome fixture? Is it a brushed nickel fixture? We found out that the designers who we were speaking to, so this wasn't all about the consumer. This was about the designers who were working with clientele, and they wanted to outfit their kitchens or their baths. They were six-figure jobs, but they over-indexed on a love of art and music and theater and cinema. So we came up with a campaign. I think the best thing I could say about it is it doesn't feel like advertising. So this is a little long-form film we created for Life Well Crafted and House of Rohl.
You want to hear a story?
Not particularly.
Just listen. There was once a man, and there once was a woman, who both loved each other very much and felt nothing could harm them. But this intense love that bound them together was also the thing. So, who are we talking about tonight?
Oh, people you don't like.
I do not like them. I could push them apart. Do you know why crabs don't share their food?
Why?
Because they're sheltered.
Why not?
What do you like about me?
I knew it would never be boring.
Je fatigue.
Well, with great love comes great drama.
It was a fun party after all.
It doesn't feel like advertising, right? Like the client let the product be co-stars in this film. And we tried to present an aspirational lifestyle, but be honest about the dynamics of relationships. Was it a little modeled after Malcolm and Marie? Yeah, it was. We shot with Gia Coppola, the Directors Bureau. One thing I'll say about that is you have to watch out, right? You kind of get big timed. when you try to go with a production company. Do you get the B team? Do you get the C team, right? So I think at our very best, we can work with folks right here and know that we're going to get our very, very best. So a little bit more of LIFO crafted. I also think when you make a great campaign, you just don't stop making, right? The client didn't ask for these, but a natural extension of that film we made were movie posters. There was no paid media placement, but multiple clients on the brand team posted these on LinkedIn. They teased their own campaign, and sometimes the win is exciting the enterprise. Sometimes the win is exciting the client team about the campaign that you created together. Another little lovely moment was when we saw the CMO framed one of the posters and put it in his office, right? That's a win. It didn't matter they didn't ask for them. We just didn't stop making. Here's the print we made for any of us who ever do magazine print advertising anymore. But I'll just reinforce, it doesn't look like advertising, and that was the win. Right? Buried in these little snippets of screenplay was very romanticized product copy, but it was sort of a subtle invitation in, right? It doesn't scream advertising. A couple other things I'll point out. This is not a typeface. I actually hand typed this copy. So again, find new ways to do things that are beyond the unexpected. And Chris Wright, who was the incredible designer and art director that worked with me on this, even made audio files that Tim Gebauer, who did the composition, Tim at Electropolis gave us those, and we actually used them as a design element in some of the print. So, this little teaser, this is chapter 2, right? A lot of clients now skip a year. I feel like they skip 2.5 years, frankly. And when we do shoot things, everything's a scramble. It's an asset capture. Get as much as you can because we're going to use it for 2 years. But this is a beautiful little teaser of the campaign to come. I don't think the campaign's really going to be out there till December or January. But this is a little 22-second teaser that we shot with Nate at Townsend Hearst. We edited with Coolfire. This was the last Rogers Townsend production, and Brandon and the Bruton guys were there with us. So again, a great example of collaboration. You got Nate, you got Coolfire helping us, and you got Brandon there shooting.
Suddenly, everything comes rushing back.
Sometimes I still don't know what that campaign is, but it's a vibe, right? It's a feel. It evokes something. And when they put it out in the world, they get incredible reaction from the design community. And these are the designers who help us make our interiors look beautiful. The barefoot bearded music guru, Rick Rubin, right? Many of us have read his book. He doesn't know how to play an instrument, but somehow he sees the world. Somehow he gives sage-like advice. But this is something from him. The audience only knows what's come before. And it's sort of like focus groups, right? When you ask people what they want to describe it, they'll only tell you a reference work that they've seen or heard. They don't necessarily know what should come next. So you have to try to take these weird chances when you have a brand problem. And again, this has a little age on it, but this is something that KFC did at a moment in time through a social channel. And I can't imagine what the brief was, but I suspect the agency knew the brand well enough to bring them an idea and say, what if we did this?
In September 2017, KFC's Twitter handle followed 35,000 accounts, which seemed like a lot. So we unfollowed all of those 35,000 accounts in one fell swoop and refollowed only 11 back. Those accounts, 5 Spice Girls and 6 guys named Herb. Get it? 11 herbs and spices, like my original recipe. Then we waited for people to notice, and 0 people noticed. So we waited, and waited, and we waited some more. Nearly 2 months passed. Then one guy noticed.
KFC follows 11 people. Those 11 people, 5 Spice Girls and 6 guys named Herb. 11 herbs and spices. I need time to process this.
So he shared it, and some people saw it. and they thought it was funny, so then they shared it, and those people thought it was pretty funny too. And then things got a little crazy. The guy who founded it even got famous for finding it.
Mike Gadget here from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, gained internet fame when he discovered a secret on KFC's Twitter page.
Before we knew it, we were on the front page of Reddit. Skeptics and conspiracy theorists came from all corners of the internet to argue the validity of the discovery. Of course, we had to reward our intrepid Twitter sleuth with a special gift from the Colonel.
He received, and this is amazing, a Kentucky Fried thank you from Colonel Sanders himself. Look at this.
People like that too. So much so, we were back on the front page of Reddit again. 2 weeks later, everyone was still talking about the old Colonel and his 11 herbs and spices.
It's her, not her.
Showing up in over 360,000 publications and posts across the globe. All told, our little Twitter joke earned nearly 2.5 billion total impressions. The best part of it all, the entire stunt cost exactly nothing. Well, I mean, we had to pay for the painting, but that's neither here nor there.
Hats off to Kansas. Yeah.
Now that's finger-licking good.
How does a client tell you they want that, right? And who waits 2 months, right? People get fired like nothing happened. There was some faith and some trust, and they did a thing. So what I just pushed play on is a case film. Many of us know what a case film is. I think that's what's happened in our business, and we can be very cynical about this. But it's just as important to tell the right story of the stories we tell when we want to go seek accolades and win awards for it. So the case film is very much a thing. Something we used to talk about a lot at Rogers Townsend were ideas that make Roker care. I don't think we ever made Al care. I love Al. But again, it's a little filter, right? Like, make Roker care. Why would he talk about what you made? What would that crew in the morning talk about? It's just an extra little thing to think about sometimes. Like, are you delivering that kind of idea? There was a great creative. He was actually, he hadn't left Portfolio Center long when I was still there. And his name was Jelly Helm. So he had that advantage, right? Like, he was naturally going to be a great creative. Jelly famously sent a self-promotion piece to Mike Hughes at the Martin Agency when he was seeking his first job. And when Mike opened the box, there was a personal check from Jelly for $28,000. And all he said was, I hear starting art directors are going for $28K at the Martin Agency. I'll work the first year for free. So they paid him, but Jelly got a job and he did good things. But one thing he said when he came to talk to us as students is only dead fish swim with the stream, right? Very memeable, very cool, very hoorah. But it takes a lot of work to go against the stream, right? Have you seen a salmon when they finally get there? They're beat to shit, they're tattered. And I know we're not living in a hustle culture, but it is hard to do brave things. So we have to be willing to put up that fight to do the good things. I do believe in a 6-second world, we have to risk playing the slow hand. And I actually think it's really what we're actually really good at already in St. Louis, right? You can do the known, simple, proven thing. You can do the formulaic thing, but can you do the longer, special thing? Or can you go that way when everyone else is going this way? Guinness did a spot in 1999 that kind of goes all the way back to that bug stop thing, except they did it much better, and they're super famous for this, right? If you ask a lot of, real ad nerds or people who've been in the business for a long time, this Guinness film is probably in their top 3, right? It's super simple. I can tell you a little bit more about the craft behind it. Please excuse the effects. This was incredibly difficult to execute back in 1999. This was a 9-day shoot in Hawaii that cost about $10 million. Allie, you told me this did not work for you. This has worked for me every single time I've tested this presentation. Son of a... All right, hang on. Shit. Unbelievable. Every time I've tested it, it's worked. Anyway, go look it up. It's really incredible. Now you have homework. But they made incredible choices, right? It's a slow build. It's wild. The story about they pulled in a guy off the beach to be with this group of famous Hawaiian surfers. the musical choices, the editorial choices, at some point they just stopped. They dropped the music out. They froze the frame. But really it was all to get across one point, right? A famous Guinness pour apparently takes 119.5 seconds. It's a two-phase process. It has to settle, has to do all those things. But their point was the wait is worth it. So they did this incredible surfer film, right? About just waiting and waiting and waiting for the perfect set, the perfect wave, and then the exhilaration that you feel, the reward for the wait, which was perfectly on brand with Guinness. And I can't believe I can't play that. It's my favorite thing in the presentation. Okay. Another quote. Before you leave the house, look in the mirror and take one thing off. I think the very best things that we make, we have to strip it down. We have to simplify it. And sometimes we break it. Sometimes we take too much off. Then I would say just put one thing back. Put one thing back. But you got to strip it down first. And we have so many things to say, right? Our clients and our brands, and we have a checklist, right? We have RTBs and who knows what's. There's all this stuff. And you usually cram that in the radio spot, right? But like when you have an opportunity to do print or TV or whatever, you got to try to strip it down. A really nice example that we did, and Jay Chambers and John Hanson worked on this. This was a little poster series for Pianos for People. And Pianos for People is an organization that finds, restores, and gifts pianos to families that couldn't otherwise afford them. They also give free music lessons. But it's really there because music gives hope, right? Music is an outlet. Music can change your world. So that's really what's behind everything. And I think when the team was going through this and they were doing some of the fine tuning, there was a line down here, or maybe the line was bigger. And all we did was we kept talking about how do we skinny it down? How do we put everything together? And I think there's a wonderful thing you go through sometimes when you're making something like this, where if you can just have it all together, if you can just communicate everything all together, it's really a win. This one in the Writing for Design category at D&AD, which is my favorite show out there in the world. Not only were the lines simple and powerful, but the way that they spaced them out and metered them. So sorry for the low res and the pixelation, but find peace in the pain. Look how we spread it out, right? It's a powerful message, so elegantly presented. And that's the win. David Lynch, there's a lot to admire. This is him talking about ideas, where they come from. They don't make sense, right? But we know them when we see them. It's a feeling, and we have to capture them because they're fleeting. I would say the first 12 or 15 years of my career, I didn't capitalize enough on all those ideas, right? And we used to put them what I used to call the morgue, right? And we would visit the morgue often, and we'd revisit all our dead bodies and all the things that could have been. Well, as you grow up and you mature in the business, don't go visit the morgue. It's not worth it. Your job is to bring that great idea the next time you have an assignment. Let them be. But Mr. Lynch says some amazing things here about ideas. We'll see if this one plays.
Right on the napkins. It was like having a desk, and you need paper. There's a piece of paper, and you write on it when you get ideas.
Ideas are so beautiful, and they're so abstract, and they do exist someplace. I don't know if there's a name for it, and I think they exist like fish. And I believe that if you sit quietly like you're fishing, you will catch ideas. The real, beautiful big ones swim kind of deep down there, so you have to be very quiet and, wait for it to come along.
If you catch an idea, any idea, it wasn't there, and then it's there. It might just be a small fragment of, like I say, a feature film or a song or a lyric or whatever, but you got to write that idea down right away. And as you're writing, sometimes it's amazing how much comes out, from that one flash. So you get an idea, and it is like a seed. And in your mind, the idea is seen and felt. And it explodes like it's got electricity and light connected to it. And it has all the images and the feeling. And it's like in an instant, the idea. In an instant. Then the thing is translating that to some medium. It could be a film idea or a painting idea or a furniture idea. It doesn't matter. It wants to be something. It's a seed for something. So the whole thing is translating that idea to a medium. And in the case of film, it takes a long time, and you always need to go back and stay true to that idea. The film is the thing.
The film is the thing, right, Chris? All right. I've already said it. This thing we do is crazy. It's chaotic. It's intangible. But you have to chase the big ideas. And when you have them, you have to find your own little band of gypsies to help you make them. It's really important. And that's the group that we have here. And we have to start making new connections, making new sparks, and finding ways to make the very best things that we can make together. Good writing matters. This makes sense from a guy who started as a writer. A recent example was a script written by Matthew Boyd for the Black Rep Theater. The Black Rep Theater, thanks to Tracy, is something that we've supported for over 20 years. We're going to keep supporting that theater at Horse Feathers. But this is a beautiful film where Matthew and team did just that, right? They put a group together who said, let's do it. And that's pretty incredible. We don't always get paid for the best things we make, but we have to do it for a reason. If it's in our heart and if it will lead to other great things, and if it supports a great organization, we have to make it. This is the great Ron Himes performing.
Welcome to the Black Rep. Not black as in dark, but black as in light. Light that drives out the darkness. Light not from the sun, from the soul. A stage is more than wax and wood. It anchors movement. It's front porches across the southern states. It's a Baptist church in Harlem. A microphone makes voices louder, but voices bring their own power. Light can make you see, but it won't make you believe. That takes soul. Soul shines on perseverance. Soul shines on a safe house for slaves traveling by night. Soul shines on a Birmingham jail cell as a prisoner writes his letter. Soul shines on a theater in St. Louis, making sense of black and white, of wrong and right. Soul shines on 246 years of being told you don't have one. Soul shines on me. Soul shines on you. Soul shines on those willing to see.
So we didn't have 9 days in Hawaii and $10 million to shoot that, right? But a good idea and good writing and a great crew and a belief that you can make it special is all you need. I had a little more Black Rep in here. This is a great case film from about 4 years ago. I'm not going to play it. But one of the beautiful outputs was an outdoor campaign, an out-of-home campaign, where, again, we stripped it all away, right? Why do you need a headline? Why do you need a headline? Show a character from the film, present the QR code, and once you engage with that QR code, they gave you a one-to-one monologue, a powerful performance that was just to you through your device. And it was a way to put a passerby in the front row of the theater and feel some of the power of those performances and plays that happen in the theater. I will encourage you, and maybe this is where this presentation is a little more geared to students, but shouldn't we all remain students, right? Use your powers for good, find your voice, and tell your truth. Mike from Atomic Dust was talking a lot on Monday about AI. I think that AI is a catfish. I think AI is a bottom feeder, and it's going to eat its way up toward the surface. So we need to live at the top, right? It's coming, but if we live at the top and we do the things that only humans can do, I don't think it's as much to fear as we think it is. especially each of you has your own experience. You come from something, you did something, you are something. If you give that back in your ideas, I kind of can guarantee that you will succeed because it'll strike a chord with folks. This is a little something I made myself. I had an idea. It had been in my mind. I'm the father of 10-year-old girls. And at the end of my street is their grade school. And for some reason, every time I would kind of leave my street, I would have just this little, unfortunately, this scary thought, this moment, right? Like what happened at Sandy Hook Elementary so many years ago has never left me. And when we have kids, we feel so vulnerable. And I just found myself thinking that sometimes when I left my street, and I hate that. So I'm not trying to crash this thing, but I had an idea and it kept coming to me and kept coming back to me. So this is that subject matter. There's nothing gory in this piece. It is emotional, right? It will make you feel something, but I'd like to play it for you and tell you a little bit about how we made it. So, hey, thanks. Yeah. Another incredibly powerful thing that I heard in the last month was the first graders at Sandy Hook can vote this year. You know, isn't that incredible to think about? Anyway, I'll try not to get emotional. We reached out to March for Our Lives. We had a contact at FH of all places, and they're well connected. And I gave this thought and this idea to Brent Johnson over at Cool Fire and Nate Townsend out in LA about December 8th, 9th, something like that. We had this in March for Our Lives social channels by December 22nd. So 10 or 12 days later, we put this out there. This wasn't high production value. Nate found the shells. They found a location in Koreatown in LA. They had about 3 hours, and they took almost 100 takes. They took almost 100 takes. And we found the one that we could make work with a public domain, you know, melody of Carol of the Bells. And we just made it. We put it together. We presented it. They loved it. They put it out there. They reached their year-end goals. They provoked the right sort of senators. It was a thing. It was a moment. It was an idea. I hope we can continue that relationship. But anyway, find your truth. Find what you believe in and keep trying to make it out in the world. Let's shift the tone a little bit, right? Creativity is a job, right? There's a lot of pressures of our career. It's hard, right? We feel incredible anxiety. It's not easy. Everyone wants to crumple our artwork. It's hard. But you can't forget to play hard. You can't stop trying to have fun. There was a system within the DDB network called Fit for Excellence, where the global CEO at the time would throw a handful of briefs out to all the agencies in the network. And there were over 200 agencies out there. And there was a little agency in St. Louis that sounds like an accounting firm. Sorry, Tim Rogers, called Rogers Townsend. And there was a year where we had 12 finalists in that DDB, you know, sort of melee, that scrum of idea off. And this was one of them. This was working with Adam and Eve in London. And we had a little idea for an ice cream brand, a famous ice cream brand called Walls, which is good humor here in the States. Again, we made this in probably a half a day. It's not advertising. It showed up in about 6 or 7 different countries, but less and less of what we do as advertising folks walks and talks like advertising. But hopefully it's an idea and it gives you a reason to smile.
Would you like ice cream without? Please. April Fool. Good job. Good for you. Thanks.
So Goodbye Serious, right? What a lovely brand platform. And how does ice cream make us feel? Makes us feel like kids again, right? So we can make ridiculous, fun little things that don't have to cost a lot of money also. My father-in-law passed away a couple years ago, and I had the opportunity to walk into his machine shop. It was called B&C Machine. And the Arbelip folks now have purchased that building, and they're going to make it whatever their vision becomes. But when I walked in, as a person who considers himself a craftsman and loves beautiful things and loves to see how and where people work, I always feel compelled to make things. So to honor him in his sort of celebration of life, you know, we made a poster series, right? You do what you know, especially in times where you're at a loss. You make what you make, and you hope that you pass along how you feel to someone else. This is just an extension of that. And I bet in all of your own personal lives, you find ways to do this, even if you don't give your credit for doing just that. So it was an incredible machine shop. I walked in, I took the photography myself, and my buddy Luke did some of the art direction. I talked about chaos and messy, right? Like, it's a messy process. But to make incredible things, you have to embrace that sort of messiness. This is my favorite line here. Don't waste your life seeking the spotlight. Sit down, focus, make something, and the light will find you. Now, I feel like I've lived 20 years like this. Now we need to be louder, right? Now we need to, like St. Louis, we need to seek the spotlight, okay? But we also need to focus, right? Focus on the workbench. If we keep making the special stuff, we can prove it to the brands that are here right now doing work in New York, in Chicago, and LA. We can't just tell them we have the talent. We have to prove it. It's an exchange. They owe us something, to be sure. They owe us the opportunity. But when they give us that opportunity, we have to deliver. All right. So rah, 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 right? This is for us, you guys. We are a craft city. Look where we are. It exudes craft, right? The things that we made, the things that come out of this city. When I was participating in a program, a global creative program at DDB called Bullseye, it was run by a wonderful guy named Juan Carlos Ortiz. And Juan Carlos used to get us all together, and we weren't afraid to call bullshit on ideas that weren't good enough. And when they were good enough, he would call them bullseye. And in the middle, there was maybe babies. There were a lot of maybe babies. But if we all put our heads together and we figure out how to make those maybe babies into bullseyes, that's where it's at. That's how we're going to do it. So when we get those wins, we have to celebrate them. I think that how we win, we know we can't outspin the coasts, so we have to outthink them and outcraft them and outcreate them. And there's really something fun in that, right? We can be the underdogs that show the world something. We've all had an opportunity to make these sorts of things. This was an opportunity that we had when the whole country was falling all over itself to get the Amazon headquarters to their city. It was an open RFP. I think that's a very ugly process. 274 cities fell all over themselves trying to win this thing. But here's a little something we did and made. It's one more film. I think it's the last one I'm going to share. We had to fill some gaps with planes, trains, and automobiles, so it's not all the craft that we would expect. But the writing's there, the vibe is there, hopefully the voice is there, the performance there, and the music is there. To make a great thing, all those things have to line up. And if your homework is to go see the Guinness Surfer spot, I will tell you, you will see all of those things there. And this was our little version of that. And it's my last sort of hoorah, let's do it together as St. Louis. Oh, shit. Takes a moment.
From the broad shoulders of the big money, it flows, dripping from the brow, down the nose of progress, onto cobblestone streets paved with brick and desire. It's a Midwest Coast mantra born of a city's ambition to produce and prosper and fulfill a gateway's promise. This up and at 'em, up for anything, hustle from day one mentality, fueling a scrappy city's relentless pursuit to make better, do better, and be better. So we stay up later, and we show up earlier. Say what if as much as can do. We chase new world frontiers with old-fashioned wide-eyed wonder, and commit ourselves to always be moving, always be doing, always be making this life in the loop. So when a city smack dab in the middle of America hits you right square between the eyes with its unbridled optimism, that's when you know that on the border of a state that says show me sits a city intent on showing you not just a gateway to the west, but a gateway to what's next. A shining monument to the will and the want to of a city of restless dreamers. Then, this landmark in your soon-to-be front yard begs the question, when do we start?
All right, so we've all done those sorts of things. There's our version of it, right? Like we can do this. We can do it right here. And we can channel everything that we have as a city and a creative community to show the world something special. Here's what I believe. There's a lot of smarty pants stuff out there. There's a lot of data. There's a lot of analytics. There's a lot of formula. There's a lot of talk about process. But we will win if we let the heart lead us. Everyone's after the mind. Everyone's after the stuff you can prove. But if we lead with what we know and we lead with our hearts, it's the emotion that's going to capture people. It's the emotion that people feel. It's the emotion that attracts people to your brand. And one of my favorite quotes, I've had it around on a little scrap, probably on my desk for over 20 years. If there is no wind, row. Let's row together, right? We don't have to wait for the wind behind our backs. We have to work hard. It's not easy, but when we do great things together, we're going to celebrate. Big wins, small wins, all wins. If there is no wind, row. And it's going to take all of us. So thanks for having me today. Sure. Sure.
All right, we'll open up to a few questions. I'll pass this mic around. Who's got them?
You mentioned heart greater than mind.
Yep.
At the end.
Yep.
How do you lead with your heart when it's in your process, in your personal process?
Well, I think we kind of have to call bullshit on stuff that we recognize as not being authentic. Authentic is overplayed, but you kind of recognize when something isn't truly emotional, when it's forced. I also think that we don't do this enough as thinkers, creators, or writers. We don't let it pour out, right? When you endeavor to make the great thing, and Joe Bishop was here earlier, can you imagine the task of making a Super Bowl spot? You've got to compete against all the hot shit brands, all the big budgets. You have 30 seconds that cost how much? The 7 million, 8 million, whatever. Can you imagine the pressure to deliver genius in those 30 seconds on the largest stage in the world? But you can't just sit down to come up with that idea, that one thing. You have to let it pour out of you, right? When I was in ad school and writing instructors told us how to find the gold, they told us to write long copy. And sometimes when you try to write long copy, in that long copy, you'll just see these little glints of gold. And I would just say, as you pursue those things that are truly heart, truly special, truly magic, you just got to let it out. You just got to let it out. Creativity needs a safe place to flow. It can't be fear. It can't be an intimidating environment. It has to be a free environment. So that's how I think I get to heart, or we've always gotten to heart.
What back here?
You mentioned that you should create what inspires you, and we work with pianos for people. So I was wondering if you had any advice for how to approach nonprofits specifically, or organizations you want to help market and help them with their design. Like, do you have any advice on how to approach those types of organizations?
It's tricky. I think there are more ways than ever to reach out, right? You can message people through various channels. I mean, there's lots of ways to reach out. I think that the fact that you're here in this room is a good thing, right? You're not afraid to get out there. Find them and meet them and talk to them. Everyone's naturally standoffish and leery of someone approaching them with a thought or idea. I think you have to listen extra hard to what it is that they want to do and accomplish. But I will say those relationships are an exchange. I'm not saying you have more leverage, but you have to go into those relationships. You're gifting them something. You're giving them something good and powerful. They have to give you the leash to make that special thing. The worst thing you can do is go into a relationship like that, and suddenly it becomes this oppressive sort of client relationship where they're not getting the magic and you're not doing the stuff that feeds you. So open your heart, make the approach, see what their real problems are. And then I would also say never make them feel cornered. I don't believe there's a magic number of 3 when you're presenting ideas. But the good thing about presenting multiple ideas is no one ever feels cornered, right? So to a fault, I've been guilty of presenting 5 or 7 ideas. And Jim would remind me that then how can they focus on anything? Then they're just confused. But give them 2 or 3, or just treat it like an experiment. Maybe they're not fully fleshed out ideas. Maybe they're beginnings, and that involves them in something. It also takes the pressure off. Yep. What else? All right. Well, hopefully I created a few sparks for you. We are all in this together. Thank you for having me at Design Week. It's a pretty amazing thing we have going. Let's keep it going and build upon what we learned from this year in the years to come. All right.
I'll say, while I probably can't make that Guinness spot, I do for a mean 119.5-second Guinness.
Oh, do you really? I'll take you up on that sometime.
Really, but we also have nitro coffee, which is a good substitute.
Okay.
Thank you all for being here. Thanks again, Mike, for
Yep.
presenting.
My pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of the day. Hang out. Yes. Oh, yeah. Tomorrow, these few blocks, so this block and the one east and west, will be closed for traffic. So you won't be able to park on the street as you prepare for the block party and some other events. So there is a parking lot directly here tomorrow. That's a great place to park. Washington will be open, Owl will be open. There's plenty of other places. But just be aware that these couple blocks. And come to the block party. We're gonna have great company. So, all right. We'll go till 2 a.m. Drinking starts at 1. Thank you, guys. Appreciate everybody. Great presentation.
Thank you very much.